Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled Artificial Intelligence in Retail, Testing and Personalizing Customer Experiences for E-Business Growth. Thanks for joining us. I'm Bill Briggs, Senior Editor at Internet Retailer, and I'll be your moderator for this webinar. Today we'll explore how merchants and brands can use artificial intelligence to drive their e-commerce and retail businesses forward. Artificial intelligence, or AI for short, can be a powerful tool for retailers to accelerate learning, personalize experiences, and drive incremental revenue. But tackling this tech space can be a daunting task for any retailer. STELLA and Dot, a global social selling fashion and accessories brand, leverages strategic experimentation to dynamically personalize the journey for their stylists, hostesses, and shoppers on its mobile and desktop sites. And with a test and learn philosophy, the brand has allowed, analytics, increased revenue, and consumer engagement to determine future strategy. As a result, STELLA and Dot has driven a 400% increase in website engagement and a 52% increase in shopping cart checkouts. Taking us through the ways your company can use AI are our two experts in today's presentation, Mira Bhatia and Guy Yalif. Mira is Chief Operating Officer at STELLA and Dot. Guy Yalif is CEO of Intellimize, a technology provider that automatically optimizes websites by dynamically personalizing them for each visitor using machine learning. Before I hand over the webinar to Mira, I have a few procedural notes for attendees new to our webinars. First, we will be asking a few poll questions during the presentation. Also, the question box at the right side of your screen can be used anytime to ask questions of our speakers. Guy will pose a few of those questions as we go along, and then we'll address others as time permits during the Q&A period after the presentations. You can also use that question box to alert our staff to any technical problems, and someone will respond to you privately. With that, we're set to go. So first, we're going to hear from Mira Bhatia from STELLA and Dot. Mira, the microphone is yours.
Great. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, I guess, whatever time zone you may be in. I am excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit more about our use of artificial intelligence at STELLA and Dot, and hopefully give you some tips about how you can start having some similar business results at your company. I will start off by saying that, as Bill mentioned, I'm the COO of STELLA and Dot. We are a global family of brands. I'll talk more about STELLA and Dot in a few minutes, but just a little bit about myself. I'd say my pathway into this fashion brand has been unorthodox, perhaps, for other, as far as retail backgrounds go. My background is mostly on the technology side. I have an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering, and I started off by doing tech consulting at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I then took a few years to get my MBA at Dartmouth, and for the next 10 years, I worked on technology products at teams at Microsoft or Hotels.com or LinkedIn, and I've been at STELLA and Dot now for almost 5 years. So I'm going to share a little bit of background on our approach to using AI to automate our testing and our personalization process that has helped us deliver more revenue faster. Guy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks, Mira. As Bill said, my name is Guy Yalif. I'm co-founder and CEO of Intellimize. We've been helping growth professionals drive more revenue, more customers, and more leads to sales for the last few years. I've been a marketer for the last 10 years, was a product guy for the 10 years before that, and used to design airplanes before that. Like Mira, I'm also actually a mechanical and aerospace engineer, and we feel fortunate to work with thought leaders like Mira and the STELLA and Dot team, and we're really excited for this conversation.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's start with, what do you think about when you hear artificial intelligence? Because I can tell you, as you know, within the retail space, you might think like this sounds scary and not like something that somebody who's in the fashion space should be using. When I hear artificial intelligence, I think about scary robots, right? So I think this is something that NASA is probably experimenting with, not your average retailer on the internet. But I'm here to tell you today that it's not scary, at least not this part of artificial intelligence. I can't speak for the whole world, but really artificial intelligence has been the step that we've taken to help really scale out our personalization and testing process. So what do you think, though? Let's talk about machine learning. So I'm not sure how many of you there even know the term machine learning. I can tell you, I think it's been something new and fashionable that people are talking about more recently. But if you're running tests on your website to increase engagement or revenue or loyalty, or if you're doing any form of personalization on your site today, machine learning can help. Machine learning is simply an application of artificial intelligence that can be used to process a lot of data very quickly to kind of accelerate the speed by which you're doing these types of testing or personalization. So we're going to launch our first poll question right now, and the poll question is, what type of website optimization are you doing today? And you can select one or more of the following. The answer could be none. It could be you're A/B testing, you're doing rules-based personalization, or you are doing AI-based optimization. So go ahead and answer that poll question. Love to see get a sense for what the audience is up to. Okay, we're gonna, last call for answers. We're gonna go ahead and close the poll, and let's see the results. Okay, interesting. So you'll see about half the crowd is doing A/B testing, 54%. A third of you have nothing going on. 17% are doing rules-based personalization, and another 11% doing AI-based optimization, which that's impressive to see. I think that's a good number of people. So let's go back to the presentation now. All right, so before we get into a little bit more details, I want to give you a little bit of context for Stella and Dot and who we are. As Bill mentioned, we are a fashion and accessories brand. We're actually a family of brands. We have 3 brands, but the one that we're known most for is our Stella and Dot brand. And ultimately, the mission at Stella and Dot is to create flexible work opportunity for people, and it is mostly women. And we do that by essentially setting them up with a business in a box. So we produce and create and design all of our own jewelry, and then women will sign up to be representatives of Stella and Dot. We give them their own version of their website. We give them a suite of mobile tools. We give them also, very importantly, a community to be a part of, and all the training and sales and leadership training that they need to be successful. And they go out and represent Stella and Dot. And within our business, we actually have these 3 segments. So the first segment that I just talked about is our stylists. So these are the women who have signed up because they want to earn by selling Stella and Dot jewelry. So they're big fans of our brand, they're big fans of our product, and they're actually earning a living, some full-time, sometimes on a very part-time basis, by representing Stella and Dot. We also have hostesses. Those are women who host events to share our product with friends. You can think about them as the ultimate referrer. They love our product and they want to share it, and they earn some rewards when they host these events off of sales that their friends might make at their event. And then we have shoppers. So these are just purely the people who want to buy the product. They can come to our website, they can buy through a stylist, whatever the case may be. So already you can see that we have 3 different audience segments at an aggregate level, and we have different goals for each of those, and all of those segments require different messaging. So we're going to go to the next poll question. So how effective do you feel like your website optimization efforts are right now? And you can select one of the following. So first answer is great, you're happy, you have lots of tests, and you're seeing great results from those tests. Second option is, okay, you're doing some tests, but you feel like you could be doing more. And the last option is not good. I would really like to test more and improve results. Okay, last call for answers. And we are going to go ahead and close the poll, and let's please share the results. Okay, so I'm glad to see that 50% of you think that there's an opportunity to test more and improve your results. Another 35 thinks you could be doing more, and 14% feel like you're right in the right spot and you have lots of tests and you're seeing great conversion, which is congratulations to you. So let's go back to the presentation now. Okay, I will say that for us at Stella and Dot, what we saw very quickly was that A/B testing just wasn't enough. We had a history of doing A/B testing, and we had been doing it for several years, and we felt like that had been, it was a good place for us to start. But already you could see we had the 3 segments of stylist, hostess, and customer, and so we're already constrained about A/B. It's just not enough. If I were to just think about everyone on this call and I tried to divide this room into just 2 segments, I'd be aggregating at the very highest level to try to make that work, right? So maybe I could find a common attribute around, people who are wearing black or people who are not wearing black, right? It's very hard, and that's not so useful when you kind of have to go up to that really high level on how to figure out how to split your audience. So for us, we knew we had different audiences that have unique needs and need different messaging. The other issue we had with A/B testing is very sequential, right? For us to get results in the speed that we wanted them, we really were limited to testing sort of one idea at a time. We also had way more ideas that we could reasonably test in any sort of amount of time. And to do that, and probably this is one of the greatest factors that limited our testing velocity, is that it would have required a large team. And in a diverse business such as ourselves, everybody wants to make sure that you're kind of hiring resources to focus on the right things. But we just didn't want to have to hire a huge pool of people to be managing testing queue. So we generally knew that there wasn't going to be a one-size-fits-all messaging that would work for us, and we needed a way to be able to scale much, much faster. And so in comes AI. So as we looked around to say, there must be a better way for us to do this, we learned more around machine learning. And what we realized is that machine learning-based tools would allow us to test and optimize our site. And there was really 5 key things that machine learning brought to us. The first is that we could test many, many ideas at the same time, because you're not really just picking one concept. You're optimizing to figure out which of the 5 or 10 or even 15 ideas you have are working best. And that had the impact of accelerating our velocity and learning. And obviously, when you learn more, the faster you learn, the faster you fail, which is also good, but the faster you also get those results for your business. The third is that this allowed us to automate the discovery of segments that we didn't even know existed. So I mentioned, for example, that stylist segment. Within that stylist segment, we kind of know that there are people who put a lot of effort in. There's people who maybe put fewer hours in because they're doing this very much as like a side gig, or and then some that are doing it as a full-time job. But within that, it would be a lot of data crunching to sort of find even more refined segments, and that requires an army of data scientists or analysts that we just don't have. And machine learning has really allowed us to automate the discovery of these segments that we may not have even known existed in the back end. The fourth sort of advantage and capability was, and this is really for me one of the best outputs of machine learning, is that we're automatically delivering the best performing version of the page for every visitor. So that's really where it gets to this concept of saying not everyone's an A or not everyone's a B, and we don't know exactly what they're going to respond to. And related to this fifth point, that could also change over time. And so with machine learning, we didn't have to worry about picking one option or another. We could automatically just deliver whatever's going to work for that person when they come to the site. And if they change, then over time, then the machine learning is working behind the scenes to also detect those changes. I don't know if you've experienced this, but we've seen this many times. When we were A/B testing, for example, we'll test a version of our homepage, and we'll think we've picked a new winner because it'll clearly win. 3 months later, we may go back, or 6 months later, and go back and test an old version, and we'll see that version works now. And that happens for a lot of reasons, I think. It happens because user base changes, behavior changes, or people just want newness. And with machine learning, you could kind of adjust for that. So you could always have that second version running, and it will kind of optimize into being displayed again automatically without you having to make some sort of decision behind it. But we knew we couldn't do this ourselves, right? We are ultimately a small company. We're spread across a lot of different functions, and we need to sort of, we can't hire every single person we want. And we also wanted to be able to experiment. And so that's why we knew we needed a partner, and that's why we picked Intellimize, and that's why we're doing this call today together. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about what it is that we actually ran with Intellimize. So the first place that we started is on our shopping bag page. So my experience shows that if you start at the bottom of the funnel as close to the checkout as you can, and you make changes there, that's where you get the most impact, because you're really, your ultimate goal is to get people to check out and convert and purchase. And so when you're at the very end and you can remove every barrier possible for that, getting them to check out, you'll have fast results and big results. So we wanted to get more visitors checking out this page, and we tested a lot of different ideas. And this is where I feel like you see the power of machine learning. So if you multiplied out all of the possible combinations of all of the ideas that we tried on this page, we had more than 400 versions that were running in play at the same time. And the result probably wasn't what we expected. We had overall, with all of those 400 versions that were running, we had a 52% increase in checkouts. But the one that drove the biggest impact within that was not adding, changing the color of a CTA or adding a recently viewed items module, which I know a lot of carts have, or changing how we display the product visually. The single thing that helped drive that uplift was adding sort of emotionally affirmative action into that shopping bag page. So you see here the shopping bag gorgeous pick messaging that delivered the most impact in that overall 52% increase. And if you go back to if you were just coming up with a list of ideas in your traditional A/B testing world to test, you could sort of understand that one about the emotional language probably wouldn't have ranked to the top. But because we were able to run many things at one time, we were able, we got this one in the queue as well, and found out that, much to our surprise, it was the biggest driver in that increase in checkouts. Okay. So the next experiment we ran was on the product detail page. So here you'll see that we wanted more lift, so then we could get just off of the checkout, and our goal is really for shoppers to add products to their bag more often. We tested a number of different ideas on this page. If you multiplied all of the possible combinations, there was more than 300 different variations running at once. And what was the biggest contributor to lift? It turns out it was making our add to bag button and item description sticky and persistent as the buyer scrolled through and down through the page. We have a lot of rich imagery on our site, which we've also knows what works well. That also makes the page long. So we kept that description and add to bag button sticky as they scroll through those pictures, and that was one of the biggest drivers. And in aggregate, all of these ideas, these 300 variations, drove 8% more add to bags.
And Mira, if I can jump in, someone asked, hey, is the page that's served personalized? Do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, so elements of the page are personalized, right? So, and that's where we have all of these different 300 variations. That's basically what's delivering the personalization. So yes, in that sense, it's not, for example, I can tell you, we're not personalizing, in this experiment, we weren't personalizing which images we're showing, but we are personalizing different aspects of the page, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. And to further on that question, if you and I showed up at this page, we may not see the same page. The things we would see were all things that one of the thought leaders at STELLA and Dot came up with, but we may see different things at the same time. And if we came back a month from now, we may in fact see something different again, because the then current best thing to show you or me may have changed because we've learned more about visitor behavior. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So going on to the third example. So now we went even further up funnel. So as you get further up the funnel onto things like this is our home page, you start to focus less on absolute conversion and more on engagement, right? So the home page is full of a lot of beautiful branded content. And we focused here on this gray or beige banner that you can see at the top, which I don't know if there we go. So right there, the OMG, shop our new arrivals. So we tested more than 25 different versions of headlines. And I would say probably just to everyone's surprise, just again, that wording iteration led to 400% lift in engagement. So here again is just pointing out the difference between A/B testing process and machine learning process. And then unlike in our traditional A/B testing process, where we would be looking for the best average headline across all visitors at once, because of machine learning, we are able to deliver the best performing headline to each individual visitor automatically. And so back to that earlier question, which is like, this is the conversion of testing. It becomes personalization because you're automatically just adjusting to the visitor on the site to show them the best version. Our team is lean and we have a lot on our plate. Here we have more than 700 versions of pages running for one part of our funnel for one audience. And there's just no way we could have done any of that in a reasonable amount of time if we were manually, A/B testing. And using machine learning here was like having a little army of analysts running in the background to help us get this stuff done. So I think of that as that's ultimately how I would almost even summarize machine learning. It's like automating having these data analysts for you and putting a machine, like an army of them at work. I mentioned our hostesses, which is another one of our key segments. So in our business, we have, women who, as I mentioned, we have the stylists who sign up to earn income off of STELLA and Dot, but then we have our hostesses who will essentially host what we call a trunk show or a style session. And they earn free jewelry by hosting these parties for their friends. In Q4 of late last year, we began testing different headlines and CTAs, calls to actions to drive more signups for people to host these events. And we saw an 85% increase in clicks to host an event in the first 7 weeks of testing. If we were using A/B testing, we would have taken approximately 10 months to test all of those variations and use predictive personalization. But using predictive personalization allows us to just sort of do that all at once and deliver that best performing version of the page to each visitor.
And so now someone asked, what elements does the machine or algorithm look at to determine the best banner to show to visitors? And that
why don't you answer that
what
one?
You're covering next.
Yeah, but you can go. Well,
if you don't mind flipping to the next slide.
Yeah, that's a good timing. You were just teeing yourself up there.
Yeah, the question was asked perfectly. Thank you to the person who asked that. So it is a very common question. What is it the AI system is using to learn about our audience? There are typically 3 kinds of data used by machine learning systems in this context. One is contextual data. What do you know about the visitor? You might know city, state, or country, so you can tie to a local event or a local theme. You might know mobile, desktop, tablet, so you can show them an experience that is optimized for that form factor. You may know time of day, day of week, or time of year. There's lots of context you can create in your creative around that. And you may know, hey, what targeting did we do in our ads or our emails that would then translate into something we want to show them on the page? So you've got contextual data as one bucket. Second bucket is demographic data, right? You may have age, gender, socioeconomic factors. If you're a B2B company, you may know the company or the industry. Some of this may also be inferred from traffic source, or you can reuse some of the data you use to target your ads. The third bucket, behavioral data. Here you watch what visitors do on your website. Did they visit a particular category often? Did they buy this product? So you may ask them if they want to buy it again or buy a complementary product. You can see what they visited and what actions they took. And one of the things that we were able to do together was to get started without any data integration. Using contextual and behavioral data to feed the machine learning so it could automatically discover segments. That data was readily available, and it allows you to skip the data integration step and get started quickly and easily. And then as you become more sophisticated over time, you can add other data, whether it's third-party or first-party data, and the system can then figure out, hey, which variations perform better for different kinds of visitors based on these additional things we know about them. And so, as you're thinking about how does the machine learn about each visitor, consider what data might be most useful and prioritize that first. And as you become more comfortable, add more in so that you can better personalize the experience for each visitor.
Great. I'm going to move on then. Thank you. The one thing I will sort of add to what Guy is saying, that one of the things that we really liked about Intellimize and getting started was that we didn't have to actually start with like providing a lot of data. So we were able to just sort of get going with basically the contextual or behavioral data, and then that allowed us to skip this whole data integration step, which really allowed us to get running much, much faster. So that was a powerful way to get going and helped us kind of get more comfortable before we invested more time in that kind of integration. So moving on, I will say, oops, sorry. So, summarizing how AI is helping STELLA and DOT. So I think I've hit on this a few times, and hopefully you get kind of the overall takeaway on this, which is that for us, it's meant that we've been able to test more ideas and we learn faster. And I think that, learning faster, and as I said, failing faster, so you kind of weed out the bad things, is a super critical part of why AI and machine learning is just really, in my belief, kind of making the traditional A/B testing process obsolete. So we've been able to test hundreds of different ideas and millions of versions of these pages through this capability. And then obviously a lot of ideas is great, but ultimately you want to drive results. And so we've seen significantly better results by having all of this experimentation running at one time and not having to go with a one-size-fits-all approach. So we have the best performing experience for each visitor that's really running at any one time and automatically detecting what's going to work. And then we're saving obviously a lot of time and effort because of that. So because we have, we don't actually have to, in a sense, the heaviness of having to pick a test idea gets eliminated when you can just throw a lot of things out there and know that it's going to sort of test, it's automatically adjust to, if it doesn't work, it's going to automatically adjust out, or it'll automatically adjust up. So we can kind of take that time away from thinking about, oh, what are we going to test? What are the ideas? Do we have the best, are we only focused on things, the biggest opportunities, instead just putting a lot of things in the queue, and then spending our time on higher value activities, which I think is valuable for any company. And I will say, we are able to deliver a lot of this with a really lean team. I will share that, I have not one person in my organization whose full-time job is testing or personalization. And so it's a lot of people, we have several team members who kind of spend a smaller portion of their time on it. So this is not something that, like, as an organization, we have like a mass team supporting. And that is possible because we have sort of more tools and partnerships to help us deliver that.
Mira, question from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
How long does it take for the AI to adjust the customized experiences?
Well, my answer would be fairly instant. Guy, you might be able to give a more technical answer to that.
Happy to. So many websites have traffic that results in it taking, weeks, maybe months to get an answer with traditional A/B testing. With machine learning, you can have, as we do, a system that's updating itself continuously. And so you can have it, just as Mira said, start treating different people differently, almost instantaneously, literally in minutes, and then practically start seeing results that you can take action on. It's already taking action, but you can take action on in other parts of your organization, take those learnings, often in hours and days rather than weeks and months. And so it really does help you accelerate both what you're showing to each visitor and what you are learning to use elsewhere in the org.
Okay, great. So I would just sort of share my final lessons learned and advice before we get into more Q&A. So the first thing I would say is just get started, right? As I mentioned, we have a really lean team. You don't have to hire an army of people to get started. There are a lot of technology options out there and partners who will help you get started. Obviously, I've been talking about the one that we're using. But this is, there's a lot happening in the marketplace in this space right now. So there's a lot of options out there. And I sort of suggest, do your due diligence and kind of research a few to see what's going to work for you. Obviously, for us, to the point of there's a lot of people out there, it was very important for me to find a partner that would be flexible to work with us. And by that, I mean, I needed to, this is sort of well, obviously everybody in the organization loves increased revenue, but that whole idea of optimization and testing as being a path and machine learning being a path to deliver that required some selling into the company to say that this investment was going to be worth it. So finding a partner that was able to help us sort of baby step into this process, prove that it was going to work before we had to make a huge commitment, that was really critical to get going. And I think that that's something I would highly suggest that you look for in a partner before you sign up for, an expensive solution that you're locked into for a long period of time. So obviously, it does require an experimentation plan. So I suggest that you focus first on where users are following, looking at your data on your site. We're heavy Google Analytics users, and we look at where people are falling out of our funnel, and that's where we start with all of our ideas. And we actually do it through sort of we build those experimentation plans through cross-team collaboration and brainstorming, and it's actually pretty fun to say, to have a session that has people from your creative team and your e-commerce team and your product team and saying, okay, we clearly have this problem in this last step of our funnel. Here's what the experience is, or there's opportunity to improve it. What are all the ideas we may have as a team on how we can get fewer people to fall out? And that's how we come up with our ideas. But it's also important to remember that a lot of ideas fail. The majority of them will fail. So the key is to test more ideas, learning and iterating, versus just kind of picking a few. And that is the last point, right, which is focusing on learning faster. So testing more ideas means you're gonna learn more, so you can focus your improvements on what's working. And learning faster obviously delivers better results sooner, which drives more revenue for your business, which is always a good thing. So that is actually it from me, and I think we are going to move to questions.
Great. Thanks very much, Mira. One of the questions I see on our list here pertains to your gorgeous checkout message. The question is, was that item tailored to the item in the cart, or is it always a positive reinforcing adjective?
Well, I guess the answer could be, it could be either, and you should try both. For us, it was because it's often we have, the example we put up was one item in the cart, but most of our carts have multiple items. So it was more just general affirmative action. You're going to look great in this, you're gorgeous, etc. But it can also be tailored to whatever you might have in the cart.
Okay, very good, thank you. A question here for Guy. Guy, what elements does the machine algorithm look at to determine the best banner to show to visitors?
The machine learning will use everything it can see to better personalize that experience. So it'll use the contextual data, the behavioral data, the demographic data. There was another question that said, hey, does the behavioral data require integration? And the answer is, at least for the system, no. The act of integrating Intellimize is adding a line of code to your site. That line of code will not only personalize the site, it'll listen for those behavioral elements. So yes, you do need something listening for that behavior. And at least in the system there, they are one and the same snippet.
Okay, good. Thanks, Guy. Question here for Mira. Was there a learning curve to using Intellimize? Our team is smaller, and website optimization is part of one person's responsibilities.
Yeah. I mean, there's a learning curve with everything, right? I would say. So, of course, there's going to be some learning and adjustment. I think I mentioned that we have 0 people in our company whose full-time job is website optimization. So it was important to us that for the team, that said, we did have experience in A/B testing. So we had the basic, fundamentals of how to think about testing were understood. Then beyond that, what really differentiated Intellimize for us that was very helpful was that they actually build a lot of the tests for us. And so instead of having to wait for one of our web developers to set up a test and put it in our queue, which just adds more work, that really helped augment as well our sort of our overall team, because now we're not the bottleneck. Implementation is not the bottleneck. It's on us only to come up with the ideas and then know how to sort of interpret results in the Intellimize tool, but we don't actually have to do the implementation. So that actually takes a big part of that learning curve away.
Thanks, Mira. Got a question here for Guy. Our attendee says, I guess there are some e-commerce platforms with this sort of multivariate testing. How is Intellimize different?
So you can think about this as related to multivariate, but it is not going to take as long. Why? Because when you're doing multivariate testing, you come up with, let's say, those 400 versions of the page that Mira was talking about. And then you distribute traffic. You randomly allocate visitors across all 400 versions. So when you want, let's say, 1,000 or visitors for each version, that's already now 400,000 visitors. And if you wanted 10,000, you're now at like 4 million. This system isn't doing that. This system is intentionally showing each visitor the one of those 400 that we think is right for them. Not right for everybody, right for that individual visitor. And so in doing so, you're able to learn more quickly and not distribute that traffic evenly. 1, 2, when you're done with a multivariate test, you have one thing you're showing everybody. You figured out the right one of those 400 to show everyone, but now you're going to treat everyone the same forevermore. With this machine learning, you can treat each visitor differently and change dynamically over time using the machine learning as visitor behavior changes.
Yeah, the one thing I would add to that, guys, like, I think yes, there are a lot of things out there in the marketplace that will sound very similar, right? So I think the first question is somebody who's like not an expert in this space that I would suggest that you really dive into is what kind of, first of all, yeah, when you say that you have machine learning capabilities or you have testing personalization, I would say generally the pitch is we have personalization capabilities. What's behind that, right? Is it rules-based? Is it A/B? Do I have to define all my segments up front? Is it, or is it real optimization, machine learning optimization? Because, or is it multivariate, right? Because those things make a difference. And so something that is an aggregate called machine learning or testing, you're going to hear about that through, I mean, literally hundreds of options. But you have to kind of go one level deeper to say what's actually behind the scenes on that. Is it truly something that will allow me to deliver, hundreds and hundreds of ideas at one time to the best audience without me having to predefine who's going to get what? That's the big difference. I'm not doing the predefinition of who must see what.
So then, Mira, is it fair to say that AI determines the 300 variations or however many there are that are running?
Yes, it does. So you or your marketing team or myself or whoever's working your optimization determines the 300 ideas, right? Then machine learning determines which one of those is going to work for whom behind the scenes, or says, 10 of them are garbage, don't even show them to anybody. So idea generation will always be on you. Who's going to react best to what they see is going to be in the machine learning. By the way, this is like the non-technical spin on how I feel like it impacts me and my business. I would probably be like, I'd be cringing about how I'm describing this, but at the end of the day, actually, that's how I feel like it manifests itself for ourselves in the real world.
Mira, I couldn't agree with you more. The opposite of cringing. I think you're absolutely describing real life in that this system and machine learning, when correctly applied, hopefully frees us as marketers and growth professionals up to spend more time intimately understanding a day in the life of our prospect, thinking through their journey, and coming up with ideas that are more likely to persuade them to become a customer or buy more often or increase their bag size. And so, if a system like this can give us more time to do that, then great. We're doing the things that humans are uniquely great at doing, being creative, empathizing with customers and prospects. And the machine learning can take care of then maximizing the lift in revenue that'll come out of those ideas. So what you're saying resonates for me completely.
Mira, I have a question here for you. How did you figure out what exactly you should experiment with on your site, and how did you know when you had come up with enough ideas to test? In other words, is there a magic number?
So we started by, I mentioned, we're a heavy Google Analytics use company. So we understand and we spend time understanding the funnel on our sites to understand where people are dropping off. And so we started by saying, okay, in terms of how do we figure out exactly what we should be experimenting on, we looked at problem areas first. And then on top of that, we also knew, as I mentioned, we knew that we had these 3 different type of segments that were coming to our site, and we knew that they were going to have different wants. So you kind of take those 2 combinations of what you already know, what does the data already say, and what do you kind of already know in your personas exist within your site. And then we just started, right? And I think that's actually part of you just got to start somewhere. So we started in the checkout path because, like I said, I think more money is better, and the fastest way to get more money is to get more people to check out. So that felt like a good place to start. But we could have started on the homepage too if engagement was really where we felt our GA, we had a high bounce. Let's say our GA said we had a really high bounce rate on our homepage. We would have said, okay, well, that's clearly where we need to start because we need to get people to actually want to click into the next stuff. So we eventually moved there, but for us, we started further down the funnel. So that's how we figured out what we needed to, where we needed to start testing. And then, like I said, we just sort of, I think this is where we've gone with the approach of great ideas can come from a bunch of different perspectives. And so the coming up with a list of ideas, if we say we get everybody in a room together that has creative experience or marketing experience or more on the technology side, and just look at the problem and say, okay, what do we think is going to help here? That's how we came up with our list. And how do we know if we have enough? What is there a magic number? I don't think so. And I think what machine learning helps with is that you don't have to. I mean, I would say in like traditional A/B testing, we would have said, well, the magic number is like the number of things that we could possibly do at one time, which is a handful. In machine learning, it's like the more the better, because, and especially in our world where we don't have to implement every version of the test ourselves because Intellimize is doing it, like we just go with more is better.
All right, well, that makes sense. Speaking of numbers, a follow-on to the 300 variations, the questioner asks, does someone have to write 300 types of copy for the banner text?
Yes. So, yeah, we have to come, and the reason, we feel like we had to come up, 300 variations is when you think about all the multiples. So we come up with like 20 headlines, right, on a banner that are on brand in the tone that we want. But it's the multiples that when you get into 300, 400, it's because we're iterating on multiple things on the page. So that means that because of all of the multiple combinations that could be provided to one user, that's why it kind of combines into 300 versions. But no, we didn't sit there and say, I mean, again, we could have, but at some point, there's diminishing returns to that. So we came up with maybe 20 or 25 versions of that headline, but it was the other things that also had versions of them on the page that kind of multiplied to the 300 different variants, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Mira, for me, it resonates a ton. And, a way I often think about it is, if I had 5 images, 5 headlines, and 5 calls to action, like I would have created 10 pieces of text, right? The 5 headlines and 5 CTAs, and then created 5 images. That would mean I've got 5 times 5 times 5, 125 different combinations out there. And part of the value of using machine learning is that you don't have to specify all 125. It'll go figure it out, and it'll go figure out, given these 10 pieces of text and 5 images, what's the best thing to show each individual visitor. So yeah, totally with you.
Great. Mira, who leads this project within your organization? Is it marketing, e-commerce, some tech department?
So originally, A/B testing was initiated at our organization by a user experience team, which is really part of our, we have a structure here organizationally that kind of maps more to traditional pure technology companies than maybe most retailers. So we have a product management function. They're the digital product managers. They're the ones who are kind of like the business people thinking about what do we want to build, what's the roadmap and the strategy that work with the engineers. And then we have our user experience designers who are kind of, once the ideas are generated, they're the ones that kind of come up with how do we best implement this for the user on the site. And UX, I think, was originally the champion for this idea of testing on our site, and so has functionally then also become kind of the steward and champion as we evolved into personalization and machine learning. So at a high level, I would say it's driven by like our product management organization, but in close collaboration with our e-commerce and marketing teams. Engineering is basically not a part of this because they don't need to be, right? So that's actually that's good, having a solution that allows you to have your engineers focus on other higher value long-term projects than optimization, I think is critical. So once we're kind of up and running and everyone's happy with performance, we don't have to involve engineering really in any depth.
Thanks, Mira. Guy, this one's for you. An attendee asks or points out, my site doesn't have a shopping bag or checkout feature. Basically, we don't sell products on our site. Is AI-based optimization still useful in this case?
A great question, and the answer is unambiguously yes. If your prospect's journey on your mobile or desktop website is an important part of you growing your business, then using AI-based optimization is valuable. You know, with STELLA and DOT, we're optimizing for each of these 3 different audiences, taking the actions we want them to take. You know, buying more often, signing up to host an event, signing up to, you know, be a stylist. If you have other events, let's say you're B2B, you know, your events may be sign up for a webinar, download a white paper, raise your hand to talk to a salesperson. You know, if you're financial services, it may be, I want somebody to go through this 5-step flow and apply for a product at the end. Whatever that digital action is, you can then go optimize for it. And if you've got multiple digital actions you care about, you can then optimize for them in concert. You may say, you know, on STELLA and DOT, I could, you know, say, hey, you know, creating an account is worth, you know, I'll make up numbers that have no correlation to the actual data at STELLA and DOT. So let's pick another retailer, another random retailer. You know, submitting an email is worth $5. Buying a product worth $10. Buying the subscription is worth $30. You can, in aggregate, optimize for the total value, total revenue created from those using machine learning, whether those are the 3 things you care about or there are other digital actions that are important to your business.
Great, thanks, Guy. I have a question now for Mira. Our attendee wants to know how you're measuring success at STELLA and DOT, through your partner, through Google Analytics, or something else?
Great question. Ultimately, we do, I mean, so the first starting point is first you have to decide how you're going to measure success, i.e. what's your goal, right? So with every experiment that you run, you define a set of goals. So on our checkout pages, like I said, the goal was more people clicking that checkout button. On our homepage, it is more people engaging in the next click in the site. And so there you do have to rely on, once you define your goals, of how you're going to, and by the way, that's actually easier said than done in terms of just understanding what is the measure of success, because on any, you know, on any page, there's like many different things that you might be trying to accomplish. So once you define those goals, then you see the results of how you, one version versus another versus what you know, versus sort of your control, you would look at reporting through your partner, i.e. in our case, Intellimize, to see how overall results are being driven. But then obviously at the end of the day, this should all be hopefully adding up to higher conversion rate on your site and more revenue, which we can then, you know, which we would be tracking in GA, but you don't track test level results in GA, in Google Analytics.
Okay, thanks, Mira. I have a question here for Guy. Guy, can Intellimize integrate with off-site marketing tools? For example, can you learn what a visitor is interested in, then feed that data into an email series?
You can, and if you have a third-party system like that's managing your EMS, you know, that is your email marketing system, you can take what somebody saw on their website and then pass it to that EMS, and you can do that with any testing system, right? You know, you can connect the 2 together. You can also go the other way. You can say, look, somebody got this particular email. I'm going to instrument that email with like UTM parameters, because that is, you know, a typical thing we might do to feed our analytics system, and use that to tee up the variations someone sees so that you have messaging that is consistent. So yes, you can feed out to your email management system or your ads, or you can feed in from your ads and email or other channels like social, either organic or paid, into your website optimization.
Okay, thanks, Guy. Question here for Mira. Mira, what decides which version of a page someone sees?
Well, actually, Guy, maybe you want to take that. I think it's basically all the pieces of data that he was mentioning go into driving the decision around. Basically, I think the short answer is it's the machine learning algorithm that then decides what's going to be all of, you know, the best performing version to show.
That's exactly right, Mira. And, you know, because we're using machine learning together, we can get a better understanding of what actually drove lift so that you can make better decisions about what to show people. So, you know, if I bought something on STELLA.com, you know, is that because of me? Is that because of the ad campaign I just saw? Is it because that emotionally affirmative language was there? And you can use machine learning to tease out, really, was it context? Was it the variation itself? And do a better job of then deciding, well, what do I show the next person? You know, does the next person share some attributes with me? Do they look really different? And use that insight to better decide what to show.
Great, thanks, Guy and Mira. Another question for Mira as we get closer to the end of our time slot. Mira, what's the time period after which you saw positive results?
Well, I would say once you're up and running, it's fairly fast. And so with anything, and this is with any partner, generally speaking, I'd say the longest part of getting started is getting a partner's tags on your site. And that, depending on who you are, could be fast or slow. I like to think we're actually a relatively fast-moving organization. We actually do releases every single day. So we were able to, you know, kind of between the time that we said, okay, yeah, we want to start testing and get going, you know, it was a few weeks before we were able to have the capability running. And also because we didn't start with having a lot of our own first-party data as part of the solution. We started with that contextual or behavioral data. That meant we could also start very quickly. Then it was like, okay, well, then you got to get the test queue going. And by the way, you can be doing that at the same time as you're waiting to get up and running. So you start building your test queue of here are all the ideas. And, you know, in general, because you have to then implement them, that can take a couple weeks as well once you get your ideas queued up. So I would say within a couple months of the deciding to start, we were starting to see our first results. But obviously your results and how impactful they are basically 100% correlated to how many ideas you're testing at one time. So our results just sort of magnified as we got things, more and more things up and running. But I would say, you know, the initial like, oh, there's something here and this is working for us, you know, happened within the first couple months.
Thanks, Mira. Guy, looks like we have time for one more question for you. How can you attribute the success in conversion to this AI-driven optimization?
A great question, and I think the right way to do it is something we all should be doing with all of our optimization, but I know many of us don't end up doing, and that's to have a holdback bucket, to have a group of visitors who see the base website forever. Until you decide to change the base site. And so we happen to do that. We have a control group that sees the base website and we decide how big that is. I think we you know, it's often 20% of the traffic. And then you take the other 80% and you personalize for them. You give them the then current best experience. And, you know, some of our customers will take some of the best learnings from the personalization, bake it into the control experience to the base website. It won't drive as much lift as personalization, but it's still better than what was already there. And so you raise where the control was, giving the business overall more lift. So the short answer is have a holdback group. Have them see the base site.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Guy. That's all the time for formal questions on this session. Someone can follow up and answer questions that we have not been able to get to today. We'll follow up with our questioners. Right now, I want to say thanks to Mira and Guy for your insightful presentations today, and I'm sure everybody learned a lot about AI and machine learning and got some good takeaways to consider incorporating into their own strategies and tactics. A couple of notes for our attendees. First, there will be a replay of this webinar available on digitalcommerce360.com, our website. Second, please, if you would, take 2 minutes to fill out a short survey that pops up on your screen after we close the webinar. Your feedback will help us understand the kinds of presentations that work best and will help us plan future webinar topics. Thanks again for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.